Okay, this video is about the Feingold diet for hyperactivity is how it was first described in the 1970s. Later on, people said it was for attention deficit, which was sort of like the new DSM word for hyperactive behavior. Basically, definition ADHD is anything that annoys a teacher. Benjamin Feingold was a pediatrician and an allergist in California in the 1970s, and he wrote a book here about the Feingold diet. And his conclusion was that it helped kids to be less hyperactive, also have less allergies. It turns out they have less eczema. They just have a lot of fewer problems in general. He actually wrote that it can affect almost any system in the body. What was the main point of the Feingold diet? It was an elimination diet, meaning avoiding certain things that he felt were strongly associated with hyperactive behavior and other health problems in children. You can see his website. His website's feingold.org. There's a lot of information there. There's also a whole bunch of scientific papers. So if you want to look stuff up, you can. It's basically minimalism for children, sort of taking them back to the past, time travel to less processed food. He sort of started talking about this more and more after 1973. The main thing he talks about avoiding are food dyes. All those food dyes, red number 40, yellow number 5, a lot of these things are just petroleum products. These names, red number 40, yellow number 5, they're just euphemisms for these big, giant petroleum chemicals. They're very toxic. They're not food, okay? This is not food. This doesn't occur in nature. He also recommended avoiding artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners, and preservatives, things like BHA, BHT, TBHQ. These are especially put into foods to prevent the fats from going rancid. Rancidity of fats is a big problem in food spoilage. Important food dyes to avoid, they felt the worst ones were red number 40, yellow number 5. I would just say you want to avoid all of them. All of these things are much worse than is widely known. He also said artificial flavors like vanillin. I didn't hear too much talk about MSG, but I would definitely avoid MSG and MFG, manufactured free glutamate, which are ubiquitous in processed foods. Artificial sweeteners, he says, to avoid, like aspartame, Splenda, etc. But aspartame wasn't even around in 1973. Artificial fragrances. So again, the way I see it, the benefit of Feingold, it was sort of a pushback on all these food additives. So basically, the food additives kept ramping up through the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and he's saying, no, it's a pushback, okay? So you want to go back in time, if you will. But, of course, the obvious thing is that it doesn't go far enough. He also recommended avoid salicylates like aspirin. There's some people are allergic to aspirin. He felt the diet must be followed strictly. Small breaks in the diet can lead to big symptoms. The whole family should follow it. It makes it easier for the kids. Usually it's a mom who's home. Mothers tend to spend much more time with children than fathers do. One thing funny, if you go to Wikipedia, they basically kind of slander the guy. Say, it doesn't work, it's boring, it's not practical. Yeah, right. I'm the exact opposite. I think it's a great idea. It just doesn't go far enough. Okay, Feingold and then people who subsequently researched it, they claim it also helps patients with behavior problems, eczema, asthma, anxiety, even as psychiatric conditions, so-called psychiatric conditions like bipolar, major depression, mood swings, sleep disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorder, tics, and seizures, okay? Here's some additional thoughts that I have and some others have had on diets for children. Dr. McDougall recommends put them on a 100% vegan diet with no oils. He does say children can eat more fattening things just because, kids burn a lot of calories, so it's okay for them to have nuts and seeds and all that stuff. Most adults are overweight and they need to minimize high-fat plant foods. Okay, other things I would recommend is that you definitely want to filter your water. Get the F- out of there, get the Al out of there. At a minimum, use a carbon water filter to remove, the estrogenics and the chlorine once it's in your house. But I like reverse osmosis. Get the F- out, the Al, and some other chemicals. I say organic only because you avoid the atrazine that's sprayed on corn. Corn's used for high fructose corn syrup as well. Atrazine's a mitochondria inhibitor. It's toxic stuff. It's also strongly estrogenic. Turns the male frogs into female frogs. Glyphosate sprayed on the soy. That's got, they wrote a whole book on that, of all the toxicity effects of that. I've given lectures on that before. I recommend no soy. Soy is super estrogenic. I think it's feminizing. I think it's premature puberty, goitrogenic. It's a bad food. I think it just gets a lot of industry press and it's for chumps. I think it probably contributes to infertility in both males and females, and maybe that's why it's promoted so much. Oatmeal gets GP sprayed on it if it's not organic, potentially, like from Canada where they get the short growing season. Same thing with beans. I say no high fructose corn syrup, no MSG, no MSG. And to avoid all this stuff, what do you have to do? You basically, here's one of the books, Feingold Cookbook for Hyperactive Children, then there's another one. I would say you basically have to eat zero processed foods. Zero. You just can't eat processed foods because there's almost always going to be bad things in a processed food. If there's more than one ingredient, two ingredients, and the second ingredient, they can put things in there that and not have to tell you. Even I'll put a link to this one lady, Sherry Davis. She gave a good lecture on Feingold diet and food additives. That there's even some food companies with some cereals, they'll spray the preservative on the package, like on the plastic, and then they don't have to say that it's in the food, so they don't list it on the ingredient label. They can be pretty tricky. Single ingredient foods, yeah, because they can put something in the second ingredient. So anyways, those are some additional recommendations. I hope they're helpful. I'll go into some more detail on some of these individual food dyes later. Tonight I wanted to emphasize the idea of the Feingold diet. And again, there's his website, feingold.org. Modern pitfalls is even more complicated now. You know, the AP, you know what, letter E, and then another one, letter E, and then an L on avocados, on apples. So it's getting trickier to be able to find good food. So hope this was helpful. And again, I'll have some links down below on related stuff.